BUKIT SEMUJA reps seeks clarification on native status, land and food security, minimal impact from apocalyptic global price hike. Those are the headlines for tonight. I'm Shel Shamato and this is TVS Nightline. BUKIT SEMUJA Assemblyman John Elus seeks the clarification from the State Legislative Assembly today on the native status. He noted that there are many cases being filed in the native court that showed the processing times for the native status application were time-consuming. Therefore, seek the relevant authority to look into the matter. In February, the Interpretation Amendment Bill 2022 was unanimously passed by members of the State Legislative Assembly. Through the bill, children of mixed marriage, of which one parent is a native, are eligible to considered native. With the ongoing food supply issues and food security plaguing the world, Sarawak should strive to be a self-sufficient state. Serembu Assemblyman Miro Simu said, as the COVID-19 pandemic had been a timely concern that showed the example on the importance of food safety and food security, Sarawak should transform from net imported food producer to net exporter for food supplies in the region. For a state of 3 million population, Sarawak is heavily reliant on imported food, with up to 50% of food in the market comprised of imported food items. Therefore, he urged the state government, through the Ministry of Modern Agriculture, to look into the establishment of Kuching Serian Hinterland Development Authority to develop the region from Dun Opar to Dun Terpadu into Sarawak's food basket. He calls for the formation of an agency to sample and enforce stringent imported food in the market to ensure food safety for consumers. Developed countries such as the USA and UK have termed recent price hike on the food essentials and commodities as apocalyptic, as it is caused by apocalyptic factors, namely the pandemic and the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia. Though Malaysia is a developing country, will it be affected as badly as developed countries? To further understand the situation, let us welcome Professor Emeritus Dr. Zakaria Abdul Rashid. Now, Professor, will Malaysia be going through similar apocalyptic price hikes on our goods?
US is the #1 economic power, and China is #2 economic power. If you combine both, it takes about 40% of the world GDP, 40% of world GDP, and Malaysia is only about 0.4%. But what is important to bear in our mind is that Malaysia is very actively involved in global value chain. That means if you want to export, like I said just now, you want to export computer, we have to import parts from other countries, and perhaps also I think from China. And I think our import of E&E, electrical and electronic, or electrical and electrical machinery, what they call E&E, we import very big amount, volume from China. So I think it will affect us. But also for food, also the same thing. We are the net importer of food. So even let's say for instance for cooking oil and also for wheat, we have to, especially for wheat, we have to import. And even for some other food, for instance, the food that we produce locally, but because of the increase in the price of transportation, due to increase in price because of the price of crude, therefore we have to pay. As I said just now, this is the indirect effect of increase in crude oil price. And therefore, there is no other way. I think Malaysia will be affected by that. So we have to be prepared ourselves for inflation. And in fact, what you call, Jabatan Perangkahan has estimated that perhaps this year we will be having an inflation about 2.2%. But that is before we have observed the latest developments, especially the geopolitics in the Western world. So I think, but of course, the 2.2% is considered relatively low compared to other countries, even around ASEAN. So if you compare like 7-8% in developed countries and we are 2.2%, it's just like quite nothing. The rate is very low. But you can't compare, actually you can't compare 2.2% with 7 and 8% like that. 2.2% is a headline inflation, but food price inflation is different. It's much higher than headline inflation in Malaysia. So therefore, we have to bear in our mind that food and beverages are actually essential items consumed by the B40.
Miri is in a dire need of new terminals to accommodate the increasing number of passengers in anticipation of the endemic phase. In his maiden speech in support of the motion of appreciation for the King's Speech, Pujut Assemblyman Adam Yee said, with the increasing number of passengers, the present Miri Airport Terminal building is no longer suitable and adequate. Yee told members of the August House. Additionally, he lamented the lack of direct road access from Miri to Limbang without crossing Brunei was woefully apparent during the COVID-19 pandemic, as road access connecting Miri to Limbang and Lawas was cut off due to the closing of Brunei's border, and the only accessible way to connect Limbang and Lawas during the period was by air. Concurrently, he called upon the authorities to resolve the shallow access channel issue that has been plaguing Miri Port. In other matters, young furniture designer joining Sarawak Young Designers or SEI Designers Furniture Training Program will be marketed commercially. Sarawak Deputy Premier Dato' Amar Awang Tengah Ali Hassan said there are several companies that have agreed to produce these products based on design.
So banyak desain macam-macam. So dengan menggunakan sumber-sumber kayu tempatan, ada juga rotan dan bukan saja kayu asli tapi ada juga yang dibangunkan menggunakan planted forest, planted timber seperti akasia sebagainya. Jadi ini juga akan dikomersialiskan.
He also plans to promote the design on an international level by bringing young designers to be involved by participating in the International Expo. He's confident that the designs produced will successfully attract many customers. As Sarawak moves to adopt greener technology, Bintulu has been identified as the center for hydrogen plant. The technology implementation is particularly targeted in the sustainable energy generation in line with the carbon capture usage storage trend.
Tanjung Batu Assemblyman Johnny Pang noted that such initiative was possible thanks to the Premier of Sarawak, Datuk Patigi Tan Sri Abang Johari Tun Openg's vision, while urging business community to venture into greater opportunities that will continue to arise.
This is yet another testimony of TVS walking the talk, style of government for the greater common good of all in Bintulu. I strongly believe too, under the current state dynamic administration, Bintulu is in for yet another wave of rapid development.
Meanwhile, he stated that the current telecommunications signal strength in and around Bintulu is in urgent need of improvement and upgrading. Pang suggested that the Sarawak government should look into this area and implement Bintulu's own telecommunications system to solve the posing hindrance of slow Wi-Fi speed.
This subpar internet service delivery is posing great hindrance to e-transaction and e-commerce development, which is becoming a very common platform in the corporate world today. The operator should set up more efficient transmission towers, a strategic area to have this issue overcome soonest possible time. And here I would like to suggest our Sarawak government to implement our own telecommunication system.
Negotiators entered talks to hammer out the details on Sarawak's special grant entitlement under Article 112D of the Federal Constitution. This is currently being pursued through a joint consultative committee meeting under the Special Council on Malaysia Agreement 1963. To this, the state government has requested for this committee to hold a meeting to discuss on the formula for reviewing the special grants for Sarawak.
Sarawak government we have actually submitted a formula for reviewing the special grant under Article 112D of the Federal Constitution to ensure that the grant to Sarawak can be distributed fairly and equitably. In fact, Yang Amat Berhormat Premier, who is also the Minister of Finance and New Economy, has emphasized that the special grant to Sarawak ought to be based on a reasonable and pragmatic formula. We do not want the federal government to simply give out any figures.
Hasidah spoke during the Q&A session addressing questions submitted by Kota Sentosa State Assemblyman Wilfred Yap, who inquired about the special grant by the federal government to Sabah, which was increased by 4.7-folds in 2022, amounting to 125.6 million ringgit from 2.7 million ringgit. Today marks the 5th day of the State Legislative Assembly Dun sitting on agreements between the federal and Sarawak state government. If both parties are unable to do so, a third party will be appointed.
As provided under Article 112D, bracket 6 of the Federal Constitution, if on any review, the federal government and the state government are unable to reach any agreement on any matter, the matter shall be referred to an independent assessor. We shall refer that to an independent assessor, and his recommendation thereon shall be binding on the federal and the state government and shall be given effect as if they were the agreement of these two governments.
These independent assessors are individual or organizations who evaluates with no vested stake in the outcome.
The 4G telecommunication coverage for populated areas in the Song district increased to 32.04% in the first quarter of 2022. Deputy Minister of Utilities and Telecommunications, Datuk Liwang Lagan, said this was an improvement as the percentage increased from 26.02% in the fourth quarter of last year.
A total of 49 locations in Katibas are provided with interim solution for internet service via the broadband wireless access satellite broadband initiative under the Plan Jendela Jalinan Digital Negara ataupun Jendela. Meanwhile, for 4G coverage, expansion program, and a total of 19 locations have been identified in Katibas area and currently in various implementation stages.
Meanwhile, further improvements are expected to be implemented after the completion of various coverage expansion programs under the Sarawak Multimedia Authority Rural Transformation or SMART and the National Digital Connectivity Plan Jendela Initiative next year by the Sarawak Multimedia Authority SMA and Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission MCMC.
Coming up after the break, exports of up to 3.6 million chickens stopped from June 1st. Sarawak Oil Palm's Q1 net profit jumps to 194 million ringgit. Right here on TVS Nightline. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Nightline. Sarawak Oil Palms Berhad's net profit jumped to 194.99 million ringgit in the first quarter ended March 31, 2022 from 79.06 million ringgit in the same period a year earlier. Revenue for the quarter almost doubled to 1.43 billion ringgit from 788.32 million ringgit year on year. In a filing with Bursa Malaysia today, the oil palm planter and miller said both increases in revenue and earnings were mainly attributed to higher average realized prices of palm oil products sold. It said its earnings per share also expanded to 34.09 cents in the first quarter of 2022, compared to 13.84 cents a year earlier. Moving forward, Sarawak Oil Palm said its performance would continue to be driven by fresh fruit bunches production and palm products price movement. Exports of up to 3.6 million chickens will be stopped from June 1 until chicken prices and production stabilize. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the Cabinet agreed on the matter on Monday as a short-term measure for the ongoing chicken shortage issue. In addition, the government also agreed to create a national chicken buffer stock and to optimize cold room storage facilities currently owned by the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industry and its agencies. Also, as a short-term measure, the cabinet meeting today also decided on adding and recognizing slaughterhouses abroad to increase production of poultry supply, the Prime Minister said in a statement today. Prime Minister Dato Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob today announced that the approved permit or AP requirement to import wheat into the country has been abolished. The decision was reached at the cabinet meeting chaired by him to discuss cost of living and food and supply issues. Last week, the government announced that it had agreed not to impose with immediate effect the AP requirement to import foodstuffs to ensure sufficient food supply in the country. The Prime Minister today also announced the abolition of the AP for chicken, including whole chicken and chicken parts, to allow importers to provide more sources of supply and simplify the subsidy claim process by poultry producers. The Belgium ambassador, Pascal H. Gregory, paid a courtesy visit to Deputy Sarawak Premier Dr. Amar Douglas Uga at his office on Monday, May 23. During the visit, Uga and Pascal discussed a possible collaboration between the Antwerp-Bruges International Port and Kuching Port. Thank you for staying with me. A ferry with 124 passengers and 10 crew members on board caught fire on Monday while traveling to a town in Kaisan province, leaving at least 7 dead. Commodore Armand Balilo said the vessel Merkaf 2 left at 5 a.m. local time in Polilo and was heading to a port of Rail Town when it caught fire approximately 900 meters from the port.
The blaze forced passengers and crew to jump into the sea. Balilo said 105 people were rescued from the sea and 6 passengers were taken to a local hospital. Meanwhile, authorities are still investigating the cause of the fire.
A Ukrainian court sentenced a Russian soldier to life in prison on Monday for killing an unarmed civilian in the first war crimes trial arising from Russia's February 24 invasion. Vadim Shishimarin, a 21-year-old tank commander, had pleaded guilty to killing 62-year-old Alexander Shelepov in the northeastern Ukrainian village of Chupakivka on February 28, after being ordered to shoot him. Judge Sergei Agafonov said Shishimarin, carrying out a criminal order by a soldier of higher rank, had fired several shots at the victim's head from an automatic weapon. Shishimarin, wearing a blue and grey hooded sweatshirt, watched proceedings silently from a reinforced glass box in the courtroom and showed no emotion as the verdict was read out. For much of the time, he stood with head bowed as he listened to a translator who stood with 2 guards outside the reinforced glass box. The trial has huge symbolic significance for Ukraine, which has accused Russia of atrocities and brutality against civilians during the invasion and said it has identified more than 10,000 possible war crimes. Russia has denied targeting civilians or involvement in war crimes. When she was a young girl, Australian Jan Hugo dreamt of being a princess, walking through palatial rooms filled with precious trinkets. That scenario hasn't quite yet transpired for Hugo, but she now boasts Australia's largest collection of royal family memorabilia. The grandmother is purchasing even more pieces to add to her collection, with celebrations to mark the Platinum Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II coming up in June.
Well, Your Majesty, if you're watching, I hope you have a wonderful celebration for your Jubilee, and I hope you have many, many more years as our Queen, because we all love you.
Starting in 1981 with a commemorative coin celebrating the marriage of Prince Charles and Diana, Hugo's collection now boasts over 10,000 pieces. Queen Elizabeth II takes up most of the collection, with over 2,500 pieces dedicated to her. The members of the royal family's portraits are minted on various crockery and coasters, and their likeness replicated on plastic dummies and figurines. Hugo met Prince William, her favorite royal, and the Duchess of Cambridge, Catherine, when they were in Australia, as well as Prince Charles and Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla, but has never met the Queen, adding that she missed out when the Queen was in Australia because she couldn't take time out as a young working mother. With the collection taking up various rooms in her house, Hugo said the Guinness Book World Records thought she could have had the largest collection in the world. However, Hugo reckons a woman in England boasts a collection larger than hers. Now retired from her job in the retail sector and spending time looking after her grandchildren, Hugo said she always has something to dust and clean as she works through all the memorabilia. When asked what her family thought of her collection, Hugo self-depreciatingly said her sons-in-law thought she should be locked up somewhere. The man who brought pride to Sarawak in the SEA Games, bagging bronze for the first time in the men's 65-kilogram category. You don't want to miss tomorrow's episode of Sejahtera Asia. Joining host Jonathan and Kuzak tomorrow is Dr. Melvin Abdullah, who will be sharing stories of his experience in the recent SEA Games. Set your alarm for Sejahtera Asia, 7:30 am tomorrow, right here on TVS Astro Channel 122 and My Review. See the world closer with TVS as we bring you the latest news updates both locally and internationally. Just a click away by heading on to our website at www.tvstv.my or follow us on our social media platforms. That's all the time we have for TVS Nightline. I'm Shao Shamato. Thank you for watching.